all this inflation, right? What does that mean for our retirees collecting Social Security benefits or about to collect Social Security benefits? Because any of your future benefits are going to be cost of living adjusted. I mean, we're going to see the biggest boom we've seen in I don't know how long, probably 50 years on Social Security this coming year, I would imagine.
Wasn't it? I think they already put it out. It's like over 8%.
So 8.7%, let's say, right?
Yeah.
So they got 8.7% is what you're going to get in January. I mean, if you're collecting $3,100 a month in Social Security, that's $270 a month extra. It's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
I mean, that's over $3,000 a year that you're going to get. If I think about offsetting some of this increase in gas prices, that's going to be pretty nice.
Yeah. And
the good news is once you get those inflation bumps, they don't go back, right? I mean, we kind of get them, right? So, if you got your Tesla and you get your $270, you may be doing okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be helpful. There's a couple of things about Social Security, though, that you got to also just know. So, again, we teach in our course, which are enrolling now. We're in our course, we talk about Social Security and the importance of and about math and the time value of money and why you don't want to pay off a mortgage and why you don't want to wait to collect Social Security. And those are two things people come into our course all the time. Like, I'm paying off my mortgage. I'm waiting until age 70 to claim Social Security.
Well, the Social Security one is the one that I always get.
Yeah.
Some people are starting to understand the mortgage equation.
Yeah.
Especially when you show it to them. But somewhere, Social Security, that just...
Well, all the literature says to defer, right?
Right.
Of course, right? Bunch of spreadsheets that, people create and do the math and they say, oh, here's what the number is. But, there's a little bit more to the equation. They miss some of these things. But this is bad news for Social Security, especially those that are waiting, okay? First of all, it's bad news for anybody who's in a low-income situation because what's happened is a lot more people are going to just pay taxes on their Social Security and they're going to give half of this COLA back to the government. Mm-hmm. It's not lost on the government why they wrote those rules.
Right.
Okay. So they put a tax in Social Security back in 1984. And so if you are a low income household, you didn't have to pay taxes on Social Security. If you were in a moderate household, you had to pay 50% of your Social Security were taxable. If you're in a higher income household, you had to pay 85% of your Social Security was taxable.
Right.
Well, those numbers haven't been adjusted since 1984. They didn't inflation adjust those numbers because they would inflate Social Security, but they would take it back in taxes too.
Right.
Right. And so that's how they kind of made that work. So single, you don't pay taxes if your modified adjusted gross income is below $25,000, $34,000 if you're married filing jointly, right? Above that, 50% up to like $32,000 single and $44,000 joint. Above $32,000 single, $44,000 joint, 85% of your benefits are taxable. So you add on this, a lot of people are going to kind of get pushed up in the other bracket. To put that in perspective, the numbers today should be about $75,000 and $95,000 if that was inflation adjusted.
So then what about the importance of a Roth versus a tax deferred IRA and how that works in?
Well, yes. And of course we have all that too, right? I mean, that's a big part of our course. And if you can actually have a pretty considerable income in retirement and stay below those numbers, right? And so not be impacted by this.
Right.
Because the modified adjusted gross income equation only includes half of your Social Security payments. But anyway, for a lot of folks that only have Social Security and maybe a little bit else, but they might pay a little bit more, we'll see. But the big implications for all retirees, well, mostly the ones listening to this podcast, is this just brings the ever-present phenomenon that Social Security is running out of money. And in 11 years, they are going to be out of money.
When did the changes happen? Is it 32 or 34?
So there's no changes. There's just Social Security, and they collect taxes.
Right.
and they pay out benefits, and then they use the reserves in the trust to, pay out the difference.
Right.
And then those reserves are exhausted in 2034. And at that point, there'll be a 22% reduction in Social Security benefits across the board.
Yeah.
So we had a 22% reduction in Social Security. So to put that in perspective, on that same 3,100, if you're getting 3,100 in Social Security, you're going to see about a $700 decrease, $685 out. That's going to move the needle.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is why inflation actually matters so much, is because that was the 2021 study. Okay. So now when you start ratcheting up benefits by 8.7%, like in perpetuity, like it's going to exhaust a lot sooner. You're going to have to pay out an extra $270 of benefits to that person. Maybe you're only factoring in a 2.8% average, 2.4% average COLA that's been going on since they've done this. So
that reserve runs out much faster than 2034.
Yeah. Well, it's going to. That's just math.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay out more. I have the reserves. It's like if you have a retiree and they're like, oh, I need to increase my distribution. I'm like, you're going to run out of money sooner. Right? That's essentially what Social Security is they are a retiree that's spending money and saying, I am going to be out of money in 11 years. And then what? So what has to happen? Right? An act of Congress.
Right.
Like here, can we show also this slide? You have it in front of you. Sierra's going to put it up for our viewers. Listeners, what I'm looking at is this is the interest rate that the government pays to borrow money for 30 years. It's called a 30-year treasury. So back in the 70s and 80s, we paid 8 to 15% to anybody who would lend us money.
Yeah.
Who lent us money? Social Security. The 12.4% Social Security tax, 6.2 to employers, 6.2 to employees, is a tax. And it went into a basket called the Social Security Administration Trust Fund, which had a mandate that it had to be invested in government-bearing interest securities. It's in the law. What is that? It's loans to the federal government. So it's not like there's like a Fort Knox situation here with a pile of cash. It's just IOUs that were 30 years ago accruing 8, 10, 12, 14%. Right? Look at this number. Look at what is maturing from the social. These bonds are in the Social Security Administration Trust because this is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
These are all maturing right now. So look at what's maturing. So as these bonds, as the 30 years up, remember how a bond works. If I borrow $1 million for 30 years at 10%, I make my 10% every single year, and then in 30 years I get my $1 million back.
And not a penny more.
And so now they get that $1 million back, but instead of getting 10%, they're going to reinvest it today at 3%.
I'm starting to see the problem.
You get it, right? And so, hey, rising rates over there, maybe some good news for Social Security, but the rising inflation has way outpaced the rising rates, and it did not before. It was the opposite. That's why they built up such a surplus.
Yeah.
Do you know the last time we had a deficit in Social Security?
I do not.
1983. Do you remember what I just said? It happened in 1984. They began taxing Social Security.
Yeah.
So there will be some changes. They won't be to your benefit.
No. Social
Security will be less beneficial for you in the future, and there is no way around that. And it might not even exist for you in the future. Okay? Now, Congress, they're going to start addressing this problem when? The Social Security Administration Trust Fund runs out of money in 11 years. Do you know the average tenure of a congressperson?
I would think it's long, isn't it?
11 years for the Senate, 9 years for the House. So representatives here say they have a 10-year average lifespan.
Right.
I think that's the mean. So, we got some old dogs in there that have been around that are probably getting these numbers up. It might be on average shorter, but 11 years isn't an eternity to one of our representatives in the House and Senate.
Right.
And so I don't expect any movement on this for the next 5 to 6 years, and then it being very hot. So we'll see who's in office. We'll see where the country is. But the sad truth is more than 50% of retirees today rely on Social Security as their primary source of income in retirement. Not their supplemental, their primary. And if you think you can cut their benefits by 22%, you're sadly mistaken. That other 50%, though, you're a target. So again, do the math, get your plan, get it early. Here's the 30-year chart, man. I mean, look at it. It doesn't look good. You know what the yield was on Social Security Trust? I looked it up. I know you don't. I'm just asking these, rhetorical questions.
This is a rhetorical one because I don't have an answer.
Like, oh, these obscure facts you Google right before the podcast. Did I know those? No, Dustin, I didn't. The yield on the Social Security Trust last year, 2.4%. That the total portfolio, that's how much they make, right? So that's versus what they pay out. So you get the problem. We're in spend down. That's it. Anyway, we call that the mess. So the merge, the market, the mortgages, the mess. I hope we packed in a lot for you. We do have classes enrolling at retirement101.org, presidiocm.com. You can find us, schedule time, have a review, and we are here with you as always and back in the studio in a couple weeks to talk about gosh knows what goes on between now and then. But anyway, like, subscribe, follow, and we really appreciate you listening and tuning in. All right, we'll see you next time.
See ya.